the first question. What is vipallasa and anusaya?
Well, these are Pali terms, maybe slightly, the spelling not quite right, but vipallasa, defilements of insight, basically delusions of perception and delusions of insight. So one way you can talk about them is, when we are deluded and conditioned by ignorance, we see things wrongly, we misunderstand the truth. So we see things that inherently will bring us suffering as a source of happiness, such as happiness in a bottle of alcohol, when it actually will damage your mind and physically as well. Perhaps, it's a very simple example. Something that's going to make us suffer, we don't see the suffering. Or we don't see something that's going to make us angry, following a certain train of thought. We think it's correct, we think it's good, the right way to think, and so on. Defilements of thinking, usually thinking, but it can be view as well, your view, your belief, and it will come out sort of like a bias in the mind and just a wrong way of thinking. But there's also the sort of specific vipallasas that come up as you meditate, defilements of insight. So a very common one is, as people meditate and their mind calms down, develop some samadhi, some continuity of mindfulness, the mind becomes very radiant, bright, and this radiant light emerges in their mind. So some people immediately latch onto that, thinking this is some kind of attainment, one level of Maggaphala, or even sometimes they think it's Nibbana. I am now Arahant because I have a radiant light whenever I meditate. It's quite a common defilement of insight. There may be many mental defilements, attachments, greed, anger, delusion, conceit, and ignorance that they haven't fully investigated yet, but the radiant light they can attain easily, regularly perhaps, so they already think they're enlightened. So it could be great light, it could be piti and sukha that arise through the practice of samadhi are very powerful, pleasant experiences. Body and mind feel very light, often accompanied by the radiant light, but light as in terms of not heavy, lightness of body and mind, to the point where one feels like one just doesn't have any more suffering. Again, one could think, oh, this is an attainment. I have attained one or more levels of the path, the fruit, and nibbana. These are just examples of how somebody meditating, they meditate to a certain point and they do perhaps do many good things and experience some good things as well, but there's still some area in their practice they haven't developed full insight, full understanding, so they maybe grasp onto something still with a subtle sense of attachment, self, attached to the bliss, attached to the radiance, attached to just being very mindful of an object, so samadhi in itself. So even samadhi can be a basis for attachment, and you could say a defilement of insight, because they haven't seen it. It's still a sankhara, a conditioned thing, still subject to impermanence. It's still not a person, a being. It's just a state of mind, albeit a very refined, good state of mind. But it's the attachment that's not being seen. This is the defilement of insight, or the vipallasa. And of course, if you attain some samadhi and you can do that skillfully, regularly maybe, then you might start thinking you're enlightened. Then you're going to stop investigating the Dhamma. So your wisdom faculty, your insight may no longer grow or penetrate any further aspects of your body and mind, your five khandhas, because you're constantly experiencing a nice blissful state. So you think, oh, this is good, I'll take this for enlightenment. So vipallasa can be more coarse, or it can be a very subtle very difficult to dislodge defilement. And so sometimes it takes a real skilled teacher to help point this out to someone. So like even the Buddha, in the time of the Buddha, some of his co-meditators before he was enlightened, they had very deep states of samadhi. They experienced rupa jhanas and arupa jhanas, the formless jhanas. But sometimes they called that nibbana. And one of the insights of the Buddha is, well, that's not nibbana because there's still an attachment to the sense of being a being who attains that blissful state. And there's still something that hasn't been seen. They're still subject to birth and death. And it took the Buddha to go beyond that, to fully penetrate the Four Noble Truths, to experience the unconditioned, and then come back and teach some of those expert meditators that they are still lacking in some areas. So that's been going on since the time of the Buddha to the present day. It tends to be meditators sometimes fall into different vipallasas more strongly. So not just people who attain deep states of samadhi, sometimes it's people who just lose the plot and they become very introverted. Sometimes they become psychotic or mentally unstable and so on. So there are these dangers that usually you might consult a teacher if you're having any doubts. Living with other meditators, practicing with other meditators can help you to avoid falling into these pitfalls, or at least point them out if you have fallen into them. And the second one, anusaya, well, that's another way of describing mental defilement. Anusaya kilesa, some mental defilements that lurk deep in our consciousness. They're kind of the bottom level, the sleeping level of defilements, because there may be times in your day or in your practice when the mental defilements don't seem to be manifesting. Greed? No, I'm not experiencing greed at the moment. Anger? No anger. Delusion? No delusion. They're not apparent, but they're still there, conditioning you, but way down, and it takes some specific trigger maybe for them to bubble up into your consciousness and then start to be active, and you start thinking, speaking, acting according to a defilement. Again, they're quite linked closely to vipallasa, because say you attain some samadhi, you might think, I have no more defilements, because during your experience of samadhi, especially if it's jhana, you're not going to feel any kind of mental suffering, or you feel like there's no more attachments for the mind. As Ajahn Chah used to say, the experience of samadhi is like a rock on grass. As soon as you take the rock away, the grass springs back and carries on growing. And samadhi suppresses defilements, but it doesn't remove them or uproot them yet. That requires the practice of vipassana, insight, wisdom. So anusaya kilesas are only removed ultimately by the arahant, who's completely removed all ignorance that conditions any of these mental defilements.
Sadhu Lompo. The next question. How come some people with parami get reborn in non-Buddhist countries or non-Buddhist families instead of Sakon Nakhon? Did they get inquisitive at the moment before their last death? Is it some type of punishment? Is it true Lompo Chop said Australia will be one day a Buddhist country? Will we see another outbreak of Dhamma like the Lompo Man lineage in this sasana?
I wish. I hope so. I'm not sure it will happen, but let's see. If there's going to be a lineage of enlightened monks and nuns, it's got to come from people practicing very sincerely. So that's what we need, more Buddhists, Sangha and laity practicing sincerely. How come some people with parami get reborn in non-Buddhist countries? Well, again, attachment, isn't it? Previous attachment, maybe there's a connection through karma in a to be born in that country. Instead of Sakonakon. Actually, the majority of Arahants probably were born in Ubon province, I think statistically, but Sakonakon also has many enlightened Sangha members were born in that province of northeast Thailand. But, enlightenment, Nibbana, is not linked to time and place, and not limited to time and place. In that, yes, northeast Thailand had a lot of enlightened teachers because with Luang Por Man and other enlightened teachers, they spawned or educated many other disciples, and so they had a very strong Sangha, and those Sangha could practice together, influence each other, help each other, and then help the laity as well. So you could say that was a stronghold of very well practiced Buddhists over the last century. But then enlightened beings and well-practiced monks, nuns, lay people are not limited to northeast Thailand alone. They're found obviously in other Asian Buddhist countries, other parts of Thailand, other countries, and occasionally maybe even wider parts of the world, and probably that's going to be more common now, that Buddhists coming up in other parts of the world where you now have access to Buddhism through online, but also Buddhist Sangha are spreading and teaching and building monasteries and so on around the world. It's possible you'll get more people practicing and becoming enlightened in other places, because it's not restricted to a certain place or time. It's about whether you're developing the Noble Eightfold Path or not. But why would someone be born in a different country? Well, maybe they have an affinity and attachment to that place from earlier in their cycle of birth and death. And why is the Buddha? They say the Buddha is always born in northern India. It's the best place for Buddhas to live and practice, suitable for many reasons. As we know, India, a very spiritual country, and I would imagine there's a number of different suitable conditions there for a Buddha to arise and then spread the Dhamma. But then, like we know, northeast Thailand has had a very strong tradition of meditation and practice in the recent era. And there may be new places, so maybe Australia will become a Buddhist country, or at least a country where Buddhism can be practiced openly, easily. That might be more realistic. Possibly, Buddhism, not everyone in Australia is going to be Buddhist, but generally speaking, Australia is a very open society, and Buddhist monks and nuns and lay practitioners are able to practice without obstruction, and they're not bullied or limited or punished in any way. We can get on with our practice in this monastery, and as others can around Australia, very easily. So I think that's what Luang Por Chop was pointing to, just the openness and the receptiveness to Buddhist teachings, Buddhist Sangha is there. It will never be ideal, but it's there, and that's a good sign for the future.
Sadhu Luang Por. The next question. Dear Ajahn, I can't understand why sometimes when I see people's unskillful behaviors, such as greed or backbiting or telling lies in order to get advantages for themselves, then I would get very upset. No need to mention if this happens in the monastery when some lay guests were doing that to others. I know it's not my karma, but I would really dislike such types of people, and I don't seem to be able to have metta to those.
Well, now you have your challenge, your task is identified clearly. You have to be able to sit down and meditate and have goodwill for every single person around you. There's no way around it. That has to be a short-term and long-term goal in your practice. But having metta for someone doesn't mean to say you approve of their behavior. If you see them behaving badly, wrongly, well, you may also, through metta, through an act of goodwill, see if there's anything you can do to improve the situation or help that person, maybe. But I actually would encourage you just to set aside thoughts about other people and their bad behavior, because you'll always find people behaving badly around you in the world. That's just standard, normal. Where you can really affect the world in a good way is through your own practice and coming back to see, do I have those qualities in me? Do I backbite, gossip, lie, disparage others, speak maliciously, etc., etc.? You know, do I see those things that I see in other people? Do I see them in myself? Because that's where you can change. That's where you can affect real change in the world, is through yourself first. Doesn't mean to say you can't give support and advice to others, but your support and advice for others will carry more weight, be more effective if you're already doing it for yourself, and particularly if you've done it for yourself, if you've changed yourself for the better, given up those types of behavior, then you may be able to share that experience, that knowledge with others more effectively. Because if you're still doing it yourself and you start telling other people, don't do this, don't do that, they're not going to listen to you. And this applies on the level of metta as well. You have to see that all effective good change is going to come from metta. Metta doesn't mean to say, kind of being weak, lovey-dovey, just wishing the world well. Metta can sometimes be practiced with sharp insight and wisdom and really pointing out to yourself or later maybe to other people where they're going wrong and saying things that are sometimes hard to say. But you have to have goodwill when you want to affect change for yourself and others. It can't come from aversion, so you have to fix your own aversion first. It's just the way the mind works and the way karma works. If you're coming from aversion, irritation, ill will, anger, it's not going to lead to a good thing, a good outcome. And you want to encourage those people to practice in the same way. And the best way to encourage other people to have metta is to practice metta yourself. As I said, it doesn't mean to say you approve of what they do or that you ignore what they do or you gloss it all over, but you can't dwell on other people's faults because it just makes you miserable, especially if your mindfulness is not very well developed. Come back to yourself and develop strong metta in the best way you can until you can look at other people around you with a mind of goodwill, genuine, sincere goodwill. Then you may start to look at what you can do to improve this situation. And yes, justice, we often have our ideals about justice in the world. You see one person bullying another, you say, that's not right, it should be stopped. And that may be true, but also you have to look at the wider picture. Are you the person to stop them? Sometimes we are, sometimes we're not. Maybe someone else will have to do that, or sometimes there's nothing you can do. You have to practice equanimity sometimes. And you also understand about karma. So sometimes somebody is being bullied or hurt by another. Maybe there's karma that's led up to that. Now receiving the fruits of their karma. If you can help them, support them, of course, it's good. But you also have to reflect there will be causes and conditions that have led up to this, just as the one who's bullying will also receive the fruits of their karma over time. And sometimes we just have to sit back. Say when people are really going at each other, like a war or something, often you can't do anything other than sit back and wait for that karma to wear out. Maybe there's not much you can do other than reflect and get on with your own practice. Other times there is something you can do, it just depends on the situation. But ideals of justice, what is right, what is correct, what is wrong, often stir us up, don't they? So We say, it's an injustice, it's not right. And yeah, of course, in an ideal world, these injustices shouldn't happen. But the world is not ideal, the world is just the world. And you have to accept sometimes it's a very unpleasant, nasty world, sometimes a very kind, very altruistic world. There's many sides to this one world. And we have to be ready for everything, and that's where we develop our own practice, our own mindfulness, our own wisdom to cope with whatever the world is bringing our way.
Sadhu, Lompo. The next question. Dear Ajahn, I have hundreds of cockroaches in my home. Can I call the pest control, or will I generate a lot of bad karma?
Well, your choice. You just have to bear in mind, if you do call the pest control, cockroaches will die, and that's probably on you because you're the one who called the pest control. Ajahn Chah used to say, if you have infestations of different kinds of pests, bugs, things and like that, maybe look into the cause. Are there things you can do that don't involve killing, but discourage or make your place less attractive to those pests? So it could be, number one with cockroaches, just cleaning things up. Maybe looking at where they nest and changing the layout of your kitchen or your room so that there's less hiding places, there's less crumbs. You just make it so that cockroaches don't find it a good place to live. And I don't mean hurting them physically, I just mean making it inconvenient for them. Do that the best you can. I know different situations may vary. But so far in this monastery, we've never had a big problem with cockroaches. We do get them sometimes, but we just keep cleaning and keep making it so that they just got nowhere to hang out and hide as best we can. And that seems to work. Things tend to go in cycles, don't they? Sometimes you have an infestation, then they go. You can also meditate on it before you do anything. If you're weighing up whether you're going to call pest control or not, meditate on it. Spread metta to yourself, then to everyone in your house, and to the cockroaches. Again, your actions should be rooted in metta, goodwill. And maybe that will lead you to have some kind of light bulb moment in how you can deal with the problem, maybe without killing, if it's possible. I don't know, so I can't guarantee anything, but I'm just giving you a technique which has worked for other people. Sometimes they meditate on this problem and the answer comes, or the problem shifts without them having to kill. So just explore the possibilities of solving this problem without killing first. Meditation, chanting, cleaning your house, rearranging things, finding where the nest is, maybe making it so they can't nest there so conveniently. See what you can do before you call the pest control. That would be my suggestion.
Sadhu, Lumpur. The next question. Dear Ajahn, when the one who knows experiences peace and sense activity at the same time, without engaging much with the sense activity, how do we understand such a phenomenon of the mind with gratitude in the heart?
Well, this quality of knowing we're developing through practicing mindfulness, clear comprehension, developing wisdom and insight. When it's strong, it leads to a separation. It's almost like your mind is kind of insulated, or your immune system is working, the insulation is well developed. So you're aware of a thought arising or a sense contact, but you don't necessarily react in the same old way. Or you may react in the same old way, but you don't attach or cling to that reaction. You just know it and let it go. And you don't dwell on things, hold on to things, create more suffering in the old way. So this is a new experience or a new way under the influence of mindfulness and insight. And there's a clear sense of separation or insulation. So your mind can be with pain, but not reacting with fear or anxiety or aversion. Your mind can see something attractive, but also see that that attractive thing has an unattractive side. Your mind is peaceful enough, clear enough to see the impermanent nature of sight, sound, taste, smell, touch, thoughts, ideas, images arising internally. One can practice contemplation because there's a peace of mind with the one who knows. And we say the one who knows, if you really know you don't want to suffer, you know you don't want to suffer, and if you know something is going to lead you to suffering, you don't pick it up, you don't hold on to it, do you? Like fire. Maybe this is why the Buddha used the simile of fire so much and so clearly. Desire, greed, lust is fire, anger is fire, delusion is fire. You pick fire up or something that is burning up, you're burnt, you're hurt. The mind that has the one who knows is able to say, no, I'm not picking this up. It may come to the mind and you say, no, I'm not picking it up, so you let it go. You look after the mind better with the one who knows. You insulate it, protect it from creating the same old suffering in the same old way.